The future of progressive radio. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live here Wednesday, February 5th, and we're also live on Facebook.com/Dean of Radio. And who's here in studio? The one, the only, Elie Mystal, the nation's justice correspondent, covering the courts, criminal justice. Also, according to The Nation, you're the force behind the magazine's monthly column, Objection!
Yes.
With an exclamation point. Nice to see you, my friend.
Lots of things to object to these days.
Oh, my God. So, by the way, Nina, let's play. Here, I summed up the entire Trump State of the Union with this little clip. Clip number 1, Nina. Thompson twins from like 1990s when I was a child. All right, so my friend, you wrote a really good article about the State of the Union titled "Trump's State of the Union was a terrifying game show stunt." And tell us why the game show aspect, what's going on here.
Right. It was obvious throughout the speech, and he's done this before with his previous State of the Unions. But the only thing Trump's actually good at is being a reality television show host. And he treats the entire country as if we're on his television show. And the State of the Union is just the boardroom scene, right? And so all of the tricks and tropes that he used last night during the speech were things that you can truly just pull right out of a game show. He had the rose-giving ceremony to the random 100-year-old black man that he found.
From Tuskegee Airmen, yeah.
He pinned the medal on the bigot. With the Rush Limbaugh
We'll
thing.
talk about that in a minute.
He did the soldier reveal, which I think everybody has seen on YouTube at this point.
Right.
Just from real people doing it, right? Not this trumped up version of it during the State of the Union. So like all of it was. I mean, and think about what he promised, right? Usually the State of the Union lays out a legislative agenda for the country for a year. Is that what Trump did? No.
Nope.
He was talking about going to space and going to Mars and taking your guns to Mars, which, by the way, kids, if you didn't do well in science, no guns in space.
No,
it's
gravity would be a problem.
terrible idea. The kickback will kill you. No guns. Anyway, but he's like talking about space. He's talking about curing AIDS. People haven't talked about curing AIDS since Magic Johnson. Like
he may have found some old piece of paper from.
But he's talking about curing AIDS. So like it's just all of these false promises, false hopes, false dreams, false plans, false prophecies. That is what Trump's State of the Union was. And the problem that I had with it, as I tried to explain in my article, at some point the Democrats have to realize that we are also in this show. We're the patsies in this show, right? And we might not like it. I certainly agree generally that like this is not a game. This is serious, important. Running the country is serious, important business.
Sure.
I'm not saying that we should dumb down our message in any way or be any less serious than we are, but we need to have some performative aspect to it, right? And when you juxtapose the State of the Union, which, as I pointed out, was like, this summer blockbuster with CGI aliens and, crazy plot twists, when you juxtapose that against the debacle in Iowa, it's like Trump can put on a movie and the Democrats can't put on a high school play without the actors getting knocked off stage.
Well, look, and we're going to talk about the Democrats' response and what's going on with. So the speech itself, by the way, Trump's got to hate this. The first report of ratings, it's down 26% from last year from the networks.
Snooze fast.
That's right.
Low energy.
But to Trump, that's worse than being impeached. Like, they're tuning me out. What more did I do? I gave him a Medal of Honor to a bigot. I brought in a soldier. I got them all to wear white. I didn't shake Nancy Pelosi's hand. But this is interesting. It might mean nothing, but we know to Trump, ratings mean a lot. So this has got to upset him.
The bottom line is that as much as he's led the gamification of American public life, he's kind of out of tricks. So you and I have talked about this before, how that's actually a dangerous thing because we don't want him to go towards more kind of violent tricks. We want to keep this as like, let's make a deal and not get into like Running Man type games.
Which I just saw on cable.
Right? So he doesn't have a lot of tricks left to pull. People have seen the act before. And I think that's one of the reasons why the ratings were a little bit soft. Not to mention that there is, I think, kind of objectively speaking, a little bit of politics fatigue. We've just been through 11 days of impeachment.
Sure.
A lot of people were up late with Iowa. Like there's been a lot of politics, in our public life right now.
So, Trump lied so much that, and it was called out a lot, but what I really liked is that Jake Tapper and Joe Scarborough on 2 different networks called out substantive things like Jake Tapper. And I want to play this clip because this is a point I make on the show so often, that Donald Trump's in federal court right now. We may have discussed this, trying to end you and your family's coverage for pre-existing health conditions. And instead, at this speech, he's lying to people. And here's Jake Tapper, clip number 3, please, Nina, from last night.
He said at one point, I've also made an ironclad pledge to American families. We will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions. That's a guarantee. That's just not factual. I mean, his administration has supported getting rid of those pre-existing conditions. In fact, here's the falsehood the president said. Let's roll that tape.
I've also made an ironclad pledge to American families. We will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions.
I mean, it's just a lie. I mean, the administration has tried to end guarantees for pre-existing conditions. They've supported lawsuits. They've supported legislation to get rid of it. And even when they talk about how they don't support taking away health care guaranteed for people with pre-existing conditions, what they refuse to commit to is making sure that the health insurance is the same price for people who do have pre-existing conditions as it is for people who do not. So, I mean, it's just a falsehood.
Now, Joe Scarborough did a similar thing, but what is distressing to me, and I've talked to 2020 candidates on the show, and I keep saying, why don't you bring up every debate, begin your answer about healthcare and end it with Trump is in, we might disagree on Medicare for all, whatever it is, but Trump's in federal court right now trying to end you and your family's coverage for pre-existing health conditions.
There are two frustrating things, and one is exactly what you're saying, Dean. The Democrats' inability during their squabbles to keep their eye focused on Trump is becoming annoying. And I hope one lesson that they learned from Iowa, besides, paper ballots always.
Thank God. Oh my God.
Right? Can you imagine if
we'll
there was...
We'll talk later, but
right?
Oh my gosh.
Is that you hope that they learn that the number one concern from everybody, whoever they were voting for, was electability, right? That was the one thing that they were caring about. So when you are trying to distinguish yourself at the next debate, one way to distinguish yourself is not talking about how great your health plan is, because people don't care. What they care about is how your health plan will stack up against Trump's lies. And I think sitting on the debate stage and having your entire healthcare answer be about Trump's lies about healthcare is one of the ways to make that distinguishing characteristic. So number one, you're exactly right, Dean. You have to keep focused on the lies and misinformation Trump is spreading, even as you're fighting amongst yourselves.
Right.
Number two, and this goes to a larger point, but it's another frustration I've had with the media, the Democrats a little bit, and the media in general. Like, we keep talking about Trump as if he's a unique, dangerous threat to the country. And then we cover him the exact same way we've covered every other president. This is a person who we all knew going into that speech was going to lie his hiney off repeatedly. How are there not real-time fact checkers? How are there not people jumping into the middle of his speech to say, that's a lie?
Right.
How is there not a cron
underneath
underneath the screen? I would have buzzers. You just, every time he says, just bzzz,
a drinking game with Jake Tapper and Wolf Blitzer. They have to drink every time he lies.
Our coverage of this man does not meet the moment that we should be meeting, right? And it would take nothing but a couple of smart producers and some smart hosts to actually real-time fact check this lying idiot, especially in a situation where you already have the pre-printed out speech, 5-10 minutes before he even starts talking.
Right. I agree. That would be such a service so people can see underneath. And it's not going to do it on Fox News because he can literally lie and they just cheer it. But on the other channel, so Americans can see, because not everyone's going to go to the Washington Post or CNN.com later and see the annotated version of the speech and go, oh, that was a lie.
It would be a reason to tune in. If CNN was doing it and MSNBC wasn't doing it, you'd turn over to CNN. You'd turn over to if C-SPAN was doing it, you would turn over to the network. It's like, can you imagine, and this is an analogy that I've made before, though maybe not here. It's the difference between watching a football game with no commentary, which sometimes people like. Sure. A lot of times the commentary is stupid, versus watching a game with commentary. And it turns out most people will choose to watch a game with the play-by-play and the color analysis, right? You don't just put the football game out there and be like, whoa, Jim, that was a play. Right? No, you've got Troy Aikman or Tony Romo telling you what's going on, right? People actually like that. So why can't the news media do it?
I agree. Also, remember VH1 used to do like the pop-up thing, like
Yeah.
the little thought bubbles,
Or just,
used to be
you know,
fun.
not to self-aggrandize, but just put me in the Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Well, we know Frank Cana, if he's a friend of mine, he was part of the original Mystery Science 3000, so we can have you two together.
Just how about that? Just
And that would be great.
Just have the feed of me watching the State of the Union so I can explain the lies and misinformation.
And before, Donald Trump lied about the economy, and Joe Scarborough this morning called it out really well, had Steve Ratner on and went through it. Finally, they're doing it, but I want to play this clip for a minute, just for what Scarborough says at the end, which is kind of funny, not intentionally funny. It's funny stepping back, but it makes another point about my frustration with my fellow the candidates who are there. We're not fellow candidates, but they come on the show and we talk. Clip number 4, please, Nina.
Well, let's start with job growth. And he bragged a lot about the job growth. But as you can see here, what we're trying to show here is that job growth under President Trump, which has been significant, was actually lower than job growth under President Obama over the same 35 months, the end of Obama's term versus the beginning of Trump's term. So the idea that there's something unprecedented happening here is ridiculous.
Wait. Hold on a second. I'm confused. So you're telling me that the gray that we're looking at right now is job growth under Barack Obama, his last 3 years in office, and the red is job growth under Donald Trump, his last 3 years in office. And actually, Donald Trump is doing worse than Barack Obama. Let's forget about why Donald Trump lies. We know he lies. Why doesn't the media report this more? Why do they let Donald Trump keep going? This is the media that is actually cooking the books for Donald Trump.
The irony, he's on one of the most popular morning shows while saying that. It's like, it's like a guy on the subway yelling that you're Joe Scarborough. But they went on and they did great coverage. It's a point we've made. And it's interesting that bubbled up to a guy who's an anchor on an established media mainstream show that yesterday, if you watch cable news, you heard Donald Trump's approval rating, the highest it's been ever. You may have heard that. Gallup poll, 49%. That's per Gallup. Now, Gallup gets a B rating by 538. The methodology is okay, not great. If you went to his averages, you would see it's not the highest at all. In fact, he was higher in December. And today, a new Reuters poll comes out, and he's down the normal thing, 42% to 55%. No headline about that. And to me, that's where the media plays a role in not calling out the lies the way they should, not fact-checking things on, say, economic policy. But then the other side of this is, should our 2020 Democrats be the ones leading the charge on the economic argument, giving the anchors then a reason to cover it more?
I mean, I think, Dean, that because you and I have legal training, we've noticed this in our travels, right? We know that the media is bad at law. Right?
Right.
Bad at understanding legal concepts. And
Sure.
legal, right? You know what they're worse at? Math. Math is hard, right? And you've got people who just aren't trained, who can't do a standard deviation, don't know what that would mean if you gave it to them, right? You've got people who can barely understand a pie graph in positions of media power, and not just in front of the camera, but also behind the camera. Like you don't have a lot of mathlete level people kind of covering this. And so when you get into these really important but technically difficult distinctions between expected growth versus average growth versus real growth, like that's really complicated. CNBC actually does some of the best coverage of explaining Trump's performance on the economy vis-a-vis Obama, because the CNBC people have to be versed in this kind of like nitty-gritty economic language, but the political teams, they don't have to be, and so they're just kind of not. One of the but then you get back to the Democratic candidates and what that it's kind of their
do a
job
town hall just on wage growth to emphasize that we don't have the wage growth that he's been promising, or on just the economy. Call it Trump's failing economy town hall.
And a lot of that, and I don't understand why. Their jobs as communicators is to be able to put this in simple, understandable terms. So, like, for instance, one of the best stats that I saw coming out of last night was, Trump was talking about how we have 2.3% growth, and nobody ever thought about that. And you can go back through the law. I mean, Trump campaigned that he was going to have like 5% growth. Like
5-6% even.
But the easiest way to distill that stat to me was the world economy has grown at 3%, and we have only grown at 2.3%. So who's the idiot now, right? And that's like boom, click. Like that's an easy way to kind of like put into context Trump's narrative here. But yeah, that requires the Democratic candidates to want to and to be able to have a narrative to explain all of this, and they don't. I think part of that is because they're so kind of in their own silos trying to explain their own plans. It goes to what we were talking about earlier. Their eyes are kind of not on the ball. They're trying to
they're talking about everything. I mean, they're doing an event and they're talking about 20 topics because that's what's happening.
And they're trying to beat Biden. They're trying to beat Sanders. They're not trying to beat Trump yet. And like that's the game we need to get into, the beating Trump game.
We're going to talk about impeachment in Iowa later in the 2020 race, but I have to get your reaction. I know what it is because I read your article. to Donald Trump giving through Melania, because she became like on Wheel of Fortune. Like she became turning the thing. Her job was to put a medal on Rush Limbaugh. What was your reaction to him giving the Medal of Freedom, which has gone to people like Rosa Parks? It's gone to Neil Armstrong and Elie Mystal and people who have done remarkable things, and then giving it to a guy who just supports Republicans and spews hate and bigotry.
It's not even, I mean, it's such a misnomer because you're talking about the Medal of Freedom, giving it to a guy who doesn't actually believe that everybody should be free. I mean, to put it quite frankly, right? He does not believe that every person in this country should have an equal franchise in freedom itself. That's how much of a raging lunatic bigot this man is. And to elevate him in that way was easily offensive, without being too much of a easily triggered liberal, right? Was deeply hurtful to see that happening. On the other hand, I think that we can never forget what the Republican Party is, right? And the Republican Party, it is almost appropriate that, Rush Limbaugh is at some way the Moses to Donald Trump's bizarro Jesus, right? like Rush Limbaugh is a defining member, person in this current moment we have, this current Republican, racist, bigoted, nihilistic politics that we have. So much of it was given first life, given first voice on Rush's show. And so at some level, it's, I don't want to say the word appropriate because even though I'm trying to put it in context, that's still the wrong word.
Right.
But it is somehow understandable that this president would honor that man because this president is the result of the hatred and bigotry that Rush has spread for his entire life.
We had a caller earlier, I think it was Pat from Wisconsin, who reminded everyone that Rush made fun of Chelsea Clinton when she was 13, saying there's a dog in the White House, and showed a picture of her. And
my family, we were trading like, what's the most racist thing you remember Rush saying?
Well, right. And then he called Sandra Fluke a slut and a prostitute for testifying about getting health care covered. I want to read some of the horrific. You mentioned one in your article about Obama. What did he call him?
Called Obama African American.
African American. Now, here are a few other. These are actually Rush Limbaugh quotes, folks. It's not a game or a joke. This is the man that Donald Trump gave a Medal of Honor to.
And it's important. These are not disputed.
No, he said him on air. This is not like, no, he said him on air. It's like if I said something on air and you played it back, I'm like, that's me. He said, Rush Limbaugh said, have you ever noticed how all composite photos of wanted criminals resemble Jesse Jackson? He said to an African-American caller, and this is all real, folks, take that bone out of your nose and call me back. And then he said about the NFL, look, let me put it this way. The NFL all too often looks like a game between the Bloods and the Crips without any weapons. There, I said it. There, I said it.
Yeah, like
there. I'm a white supremacist. You got me. Boom.
That's
what Trump loves.
And that's the thing that's one of the key Rush Limbaugh innovations. Not just saying horrible racist things. People have said horrible racist things in this country on air for all of its history. It's the victimization. It's the, I am the victim because people don't want me to say the N-word. Well, there, I said it. Oh, no, now what are you going to do? Be mad at me? Like, Yes, we're going to be mad at you, you fat bigot. Like, it's the ability for Rush to play the victim card while he was being racist, and let's not forget sexist, misogynist, and all these other things, to vulnerable communities is the essence of the Limbaugh innovation, and it is what powers the Republican Party today.
And so let's talk. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and talk about the Nancy Pelosi reaction. Then we'll get into impeachment and what it might mean going forward. We'll take a quick break. Elie Mystal is here in studio, folks. Back with the Dean Obeidallah Show after this. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, where we crush Trump's lies every single day.
On Sirius XM Progress 127.
And now, more of the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're here live Wednesday, February 5th in studio. Elie Mystal, justice correspondent for The Nation. Read his stuff there. It's great stuff. So, Elie, before we pivot away to impeachment, so did you like what Nancy Pelosi did, and do you think it's meaningful in tearing up being Nancy the Ripper?
Dean, I gotta say, and just honestly to all your listeners, I did not like what Nancy Pelosi did. I loved it. I loved it. It was the best part of the night. I have two key defenses for what happened. Just for those, I'm sure they know she ripped the speech, right? Okay. So number one, great thing. She did not lose her cool. She did not become frustrated. She knew exactly what she was doing. She ripped it while he was still on the dais so that she could make sure that the cameras were still watching
exactly.
her. She had a quote ready to go as soon as they asked her about it, because they asked her right afterwards, how did you like the speech? She said, I tore it up. They asked her why. She said, because it was more courteous than the other alternatives, right? So she was ready with that whole thing as a political strategy. That was not losing her cool. That was her playing a little bit of trolling game at Donald Trump. Now, why was it useful? Why was it effective? Why was it more than mere pettiness? Well, you got to remember, this is all a show, right? And the thing that Trump wants out of this State of the Union is the bounce, because the economy is pretty strong and whatever. And what Pelosi did by tearing the speech is that she forced all of the idiot Republican men who cannot help themselves to step on their own story that very night, so that by the end of the night, classless Pelosi was trending on Twitter. Not great speech, not State of the Union, not Trump's are here, none of that. Classless Pelosi was trending. And then today, just all of the whiny Republican hot takes about, oh yeah, she ripped the speech, how can we ever now, and so what's the Democrat response? Well, as soon as you start talking about whether or not Pelosi showed class, well, then we get to resurface all of the various ways that Donald Trump has shown no class. So instead of having any kind of real conversation about the speech or its effectiveness or whatever, we're having a class battle between Nancy frickin' Pelosi and Donald Trump, which is one she's destined to win always. So I just think it was brilliant, and I think that it
was almost Trumpian in a way because it moved the whole media narrative in the direction she wanted and destroyed what Trump wanted out of it, a speech about whatever his accomplishments that he made up were.
Ripping the speech was a page right out of Trump's book.
Yep,
quite frankly,
it really was.
Right? It was a troll the conservatives moment. So I liked it for all those reasons. The other reason, the last reason I'll just say, is that when you looked at the actual Democratic response, like,
Greta Whitmore,
come on,
Democrat in Michigan. She was fine. It was a nice speech.
Come on, it was about bridges and potholes.
She's from the Midwest, Michigan.
I'm sure that there are people who think that kind of talk appeals to independent voters. And I'm sure there are people who think that the low information independent voter is actually how we're going to beat this, like, dangerous clown man.
Right.
I happen to think that we need a little bit more passion, a little bit more resolve, a little bit more inspiration than she literally at one point was talking about giving everybody a shovel.
Yeah, I think she did. I remember. I can't remember.
Kids
something
got
like
shovels,
that,
right? Like that. Trump is talking, literally is pointing at kids and being like, "I'm gonna put you on Mars, son." And the Democrats are like, "Here's a shovel." Like, what the hell is that? So, knowing, I'm sure as she did, that was what was coming. To have a true human, passionate, screw this guy, I'm going home moment, as the Democratic response, I thought again was just brilliant.
You're right. In fact, Gretchen Whitmore could have said, "Our response was Nancy Pelosi ripping up the speech. I'm done here, folks. Next,
right.
Drop the mic," because that was it. In fact, Mike Pence here, Nina. Here is Mike Pence on Fox News, and they ask. This is the vice president. They ask him about it. This is a short clip number 5, but he was pissed.
I think it was a new low. I wasn't sure if she was ripping up the speech or ripping up the Constitution. I mean, it's clear the contrast here was a president who spent an hour and a half making the speech about America. Right. And Nancy Pelosi in the final moments tried to make it about her. And I think the American people see through it. I think they see through the pettiness. They see through the politics of all of it.
I think Mother really disapproved.
Nancy Pelosi,
this woman,
looked at me at one moment. We made eye contact, and I had to go to confession 9 times before I came on the show because I had an impure thought or something. And he was so projecting. It was partisan and petty. That's Trump. That's the 2020 slogan for Trump: partisan and petty. This is what we're giving you. 4 more years of this garbage.
It's also like you're about to acquit a man y'all know is guilty, and you want to talk to me about some partisan pettiness, man.
And tear up the Constitution. The irony of this guy working for, like, in 25 seconds, he triggered both of us. Like, like, people are calling. They hear it exactly. They go, because just that 20 seconds so pisses us off because it's just, it's BS. But the fact that every Republican was asked about it took them off the message. I don't know what their message was. I have no idea what the message was because it became fighting Nancy Pelosi and calling her names. Do that. You're not talking about what Trump wanted, right?
Who else aren't you calling names? You're not calling Elizabeth Warren names. You're not calling Bernie Sanders. Like I forget the term. I learned it just on a podcast I think called Here and There, like last week. He called it. It was like this mountain podcast. It's called it mother quailing, where he was like, it's because when the hunter attacks the babies, the mother quail like runs around and creates a ruckus.
Really?
And then the predator like follows the mother quail and leaves the babies alone. Wow. Like it's almost what she did. She kind of mother bared the entire situation. She was like, no, look at me. Keep boys, eyes up here, right?
I'm the mother quail.
And just let all of this other, they weren't slamming us about Iowa. They were just talking about Pelosi. I think it was a brilliant boss move.
You listen to podcasts about quails and stuff? I mean, what do you...
I was on a podcast.
You were on a podcast and
mother quailing came up. I don't know. You know me. You wind me up, I talk. Like,
No, that's interesting. All right, so let's talk about the impeachment vote today. And
oh, God, do we have to?
Well, I mean, Doug Jones did a profile on Courage because he could easily split his vote, but he did not. All Democrats remained on board. Joe Manchin remained on board. Kristen Sinema, a lot of us wondered if she would split her vote. They all stayed on board. Is it significant to you in the big picture that Mitt Romney deprives Trump of being able to say this is a partisan impeachment by him voting to actually, and it's actually historic, no person in the same party has voted to remove their president. He's the first one out of the two other before.
It's not significant to me because I'm a little bit too in the moment with it, right? Like the bottom line is that a criminal president was acquitted, and that does great damage to our Constitution. He was acquitted with the grant of despotic powers by the Republican conference. There are no moral victories there.
Right.
I will say that I am eternally impressed and grateful, to the Democrats, to Chuck Schumer, who I give a lot of crap about, but kept his conference together, and that was important. And definitely to people like Doug Jones, who took a tough vote. That Doug Jones had a lot more to lose with that vote than Mitt Romney does.
Yes, because Romney's not up for re-election for years, and he may not run for re-election.
And he's a billionaire, so like,
right, he's an older gentleman. He may not run. Doug Jones wants to keep his seat.
Utah is way safer for Romney than Alabama is for Doug Jones. So that was a courageous vote. I will give a lot of credit to Mitt Romney, though.
Sure, I agree.
When you talk about is it important, I don't know, but I do think that having any politician in this moment vote their conscience, having any politician in this moment stand up for what they believe is right and not just what Trump says they have to do, is important. Is it the pebble that starts an avalanche? I doubt it. But put it like this, at the very least, Mitt Romney can go to bed at night.
Right.
Right. And that's why he did it. And that alone deserves like massive respect. Like there's a human quality to what he did, for his own good conscience, that if more politicians could act like that, could have any sense of that kind of moral calling, then that would be good for all of us. And so you applaud Mitt Romney for doing it.
Right. And again, he did make it the first bipartisan Senate removal vote in the history of this nation of a president, and that is remarkable in its own.
I mean, look, I don't think history is going to care so much that it was bipartisan. I think history is going to care that a clearly criminal president was acquitted, and that for all we know, what we saw today was the 28th Amendment to the Constitution, outlawing impeachment. For all we know, like that's what happened today.
You know, Adam Schiff, I want to play one clip here, Nina, of Adam Schiff. It was in the very closing end of his argument, the very last day, the last few minutes, about the potential that Donald Trump will commit more wrongs in the future. And I thought this was so great and powerful and right on 100%, because I had Glenn Kirshner on and Jill Wine-Banks about Trump's reaction, what remorse does mean in the real world, what it can mean, and when someone is not remorseful, what that definitely means. So clip number 11, please, Nina.
He will not change. He has made that clear himself without self-awareness or hesitation. A man without character or ethical compass will never find his way. Even as the most recent and most egregious misconduct was discovered, he was unapologetic, unrepented, and more dangerous, undeterred. He continued pressing Ukraine to smear his rivals even as the investigation was underway. He invited new countries to get involved in the act, calling on China to do the same. His personal emissary, Rudy Giuliani, dispatched himself to Ukraine, trying to get further foreign interference in our election. The plot goes on, the scheming persists, and the danger will never recede. He has done it before. He will do it again. What are the odds, if left in office, that he will continue trying to cheat? I will tell you, 100%. Not 5, not 10, or even 50, but 100%. If you have found him guilty and you do not remove him from office, he will continue trying to cheat in the election until he succeeds.
And I honestly think the Republican senators who voted to acquit him are complicit in his future crimes. Not his past crimes, but his future crimes. Because this is true. They know it. If he said, like I've played the clip countless times, Bill Clinton saying I was wrong and I apologize for what I did. Trump's reaction, perfect call. No sense there's any wrongdoing. Why won't he commit more wrongs?
They're not just cowards, as you said. They're complicit. They're enablers.
Yeah.
So the other piece I wrote for the Nation today was about what acquittal means, and the reason why this is such a dangerous time, and the reason why the Republicans feel empowered to do this, is because Republicans feel they are on the cusp of instilling one-party rule in this country. They allow Trump to have these powers. They allow Trump to steal this election because they do not intend to live under a Democratic president again. Mm-hmm. They think they have the system in place now that will prevent a popularly elected Democrat from ever taking audience. The very last question Republicans asked during the impeachment question and answer period was by Senator Mike Braun and Mike Lee, and they asked, what if Biden is basically, could we impeach Biden for the things that he allegedly did with this Burisma thing? And the Republican lawyers said with a straight face, oh yeah, oh, you could totally impeach Biden. Under our theory, Biden is the one who you should impeach. They weren't playing, they weren't joking, they weren't trolling. That's their actual plan, folks. If the Democrats get in charge, get power, and the Republicans control enough of the Senate, they will impeach the Democrat. If Donald Trump can win the election by cheating, they will allow him to cheat. They have no intention of ever letting go of the reins of power, and this is their plan, because they understand about the changing demographics of the country. We've talked about it before. They understand that we are moving closely towards a majority-minority country.
Right.
Their plan is to install minority white rule for as far as the eye can see.
Like South Africa.
Like
during apartheid. It's interesting you say that. We have a changing demographics in this nation. The GOP also has changing demographics. Out of 535 members of Congress, between the House and the Senate, there are 2 black Republicans. One of them is leaving, Will Hurd. Unless something changes, they are becoming more and more white and less reflective of America. There's some Hispanic members, but of black and white, they are literally going to go down to one black person. And to them, that's fine. No one in their base is clamoring, going, well, we should have, this is ridiculous. What are you doing? Like, if we had a Democratic Party and our slate was all white people in a party go like, there's something wrong here. All right, guys, they don't care. To them, it's fine. That's what's so troubling.
We're talking about Mitt Romney today, where people are having nice things to say about Mitt Romney today. Remember why he lost that election to Barack Obama, and remember the Republican report for why he lost that election. It was that they didn't do enough Latino outreach. And that their report about the Romney loss was that the Republican Party cannot survive without doing a better job, at least with Latinos. That you cannot possibly let Latinos start voting in as large numbers and as solidly Democratic as African Americans do.
Right.
What was the actual Republican response? Nominate the most obviously bigot, anti-immigrant, xenophobe, jingoistic person they could find. That was their response, and that's how they think they're going to win.
Yes, they do.
It is by doubling down. Like when the Romney loss, so the second election of Barack Obama was the crossroads for the Republican Party. They could have expanded, mollified some of their positions and expanded to new territory, or they could double down on the anger and bigotry of their white base, and they chose clearly door B.
They did, and it is stunning because it's a short-term success. I didn't think it was going to be short-term. I thought they were going to lose last time. Like, well, they'll lose this and they'll finally shift as a party. But because they didn't, now they are going all in on white supremacy.
Do you think it's short-term?
Look, there are a lot of white people who don't vote. If you can go out and register every white person doesn't care in the past, but now care about their race being the dominant ones in power, there's a potential. I can't say it doesn't. And white supremacy doesn't give up power without a fight. It's never easy.
It's never.
History tells us.
Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without a demand, right? White people have never given up power. That's not how it works.
So that's what makes it, when you see going forward, Donald Trump, there's a bottom line when you see policies and they emanate out. He just added the Muslim ban, this new one, the travel ban. Added to it some countries, but even some that are not majority Muslim, but they are majority black. Yep. They're in Africa. The one country that's not in Africa is one that is 90% Muslim. It's like Kyrgyzstan or something like that. So it's keeping, now for his base, it's not just I'm keeping Muslims out, I'm keeping black and brown people. He changed the public charge rule for even legal immigrants. If you take any kind of government benefits, you won't become a permanent resident. Hence, you can't ever vote. You can't become a citizen and vote. The wall, less refugees now than the history of our refugee program. All of this is literally white supremacy, and I say this all the time, not burning a cross on a lawn. It's literally in terms of numeric supremacy, and that's what he's playing to.
And it's funny because we already talked about how bad people are at math. That's not their problem, right? It's the Stephen Miller wing of the Republican Party thinks that the reason why America is getting browner is because we let all these immigrants in. If we just stop letting immigrants in, we can stop the browning in the nation. That would have worked in 1950, you freaking idiots.
Right.
It is too late now. Too many people got in here. It's the birth rates. It is the birth rates
You're right.
of the current totally American, born and raised in the USA, people who happen to be non-white that are so much higher than the white birth rates. That is why the country is getting browner and minorities will eventually overtop white people in this country. It's the birth rate, silly, and one really really horrible theory that you can see in some scholarship is that this then becomes why the white Republican Party is so concerned about abortion, right? Because it's also hurting the birth rates in their like crazy world, right? But the simple fact of the matter is that white people aren't reproducing as fast as non-white people in this country. So you can stop all of the new immigration in the world that you want. It's not going to help you hang on to numeric power. The person who understands that is Mitch McConnell, because Mitch McConnell's no longer trying to hang on to numeric power. He's trying to hang on to structural power.
Right.
And that's
a good point.
Court and all these.
So what
things.
I'm trying to do to help demographic change, as a Muslim, I'm going to have 4 wives and have lots of children. I haven't told my fiance yet. I'm going to break it to her later. But all right, let's take.
I'm helping white people stay on top because I'm done having kids. Like I have my two.
Yeah, too.
I have replacement, just replacement level kids. Now I'm out.
That's funny. All right, let's take a quick break. Come back and we'll pivot to 2020, Iowa, and where do we go from here? And what do you think is going to happen next? Because look, in a few days, we're going to talk about Iowa until New Hampshire comes. As long as New Hampshire doesn't get screwed up, we'll move on. And before you know it, we'll be at Super Tuesday, and all of this is rearview mirror stuff. No one, remember Iowa? It was like 20 states happening that day. But I want to talk about it with you. We'll be right back after this break.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
Back to the Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live Wednesday, February 5th in studio. Elie Mystal, you know him, you love him. See him on MSNBC. Read his stuff on The Nation. Elie, 2020 is not just the presidency. As we know, winning the Senate is so fundamentally important. You've written about the judges. And I've had on in the last week 3 really good candidates. Jamie Harris in South Carolina, neck and neck with Lindsey Graham. This is not a pipe dream. He is neck and neck and raising money.
He can beat
like
him.
Lindsey. And then yesterday, Charles Booker, state rep in Kentucky. Everyone knows Amy McGrath, but he's much more progressive. His younger guy's like 35. Really impressive. We're going to have Amy McGrath on. Whoever's the nominee, we'll have them on a lot. And tonight, short time ago, we had John Ossoff on, who people remember running in Georgia, that special election.
Almost got there.
And in this one's a competitive primary, but he is now the leader because he raised $2 million. Money is everything. And got the endorsement of John Lewis, which is really instrumental and helpful to him. So, there's a lot of energy. I don't know if McConnell can lose. I want to dream about that. I know Lindsey Graham can be beaten. I can tell you that. And David Perdue in Georgia is definitely beatable. So,
Corey Gardner in Colorado,
yeah, definitely.
beatable.
And Collins.
Martha McSally in Arizona, beatable. Tom Tillis, North Carolina, beatable. Susan frickin' Collins she's a trophy that people want in Maine, beatable, right? I just named 5 races. If you win 4 of them, you take back the Senate.
And that would be remarkable for the long-term consequence of judges, because if we get a Democratic president, McConnell is still there, he'll think of every way possible. Now, of course, we win Democrat. If the president wins, and we only need 3 seats because the VP will be stuck there casting vote after vote, but so be it. That's their job. We'll see. So let's talk about Iowa. Just now, the reporting is 91 or 92% in. I was talking to Elie. I'm like, come on, white people, count the ballot. They were just counting now. It's not even hard. It's just count faster. So I don't think in the big picture, we'll all forget this in a week or two, what happened there. But what's your take on, we got the first report, and before I came in here, it was a little less reported. Sanders won the state. I mean, he won. I don't care about this stupid second thing. That's just fine. Sanders wins, Buttigieg second. But Buttigieg overperformed more than Bernie. Bernie was expecting and actually raising expectations. Buttigieg, tight second place, very close.
Buttigieg won the money race, right, coming out of this, and that's what he needed to win. I heard a report on the way in to your show that he's in Manhattan tonight raising money. That's what he needed to get out of Iowa. He needed to have a viable campaign that he could go fundraise off of, because unlike Warren and Sanders, they can live off the land. Right, like they don't need to come.
Bernie's doing lots of money
and do these. And Warren too. I mean, they excel at small dollar donations. They don't need this crap. And it's one of the reasons why Warren and Sanders are gonna be here for a while.
Right.
But Buttigieg and Biden, those are the kinds of candidates that need the constant influx of donor cash, which means they need the constant kind of upswing, good news, we're making progress. And that's why that big M word, momentum, is so important for a Buttigieg campaign. And he won that momentum campaign coming out of Iowa. I tend to agree with you, Dean. I care about the raw vote numbers way more than I care about the delegate. Iowa's 1% of the entire delegates that make up the convention. I gives a hoots.
Right.
Like who won 6 and who won 5.
They're both winning the same number of delegates, 11 it looks like each as of now.
But it looks like Bernie won the popular vote in Iowa, which I do think is more important. I actually think that Bernie was right to push for have those numbers released, even though if that's part of the reason why Iowa had so many problems. So I think he comes out. I think Bernie comes out strong. Look, the old punditry thing is that there are 3 tickets coming out of Iowa, right? And who have the 3 tickets to keep in this race at Iowa? It's Buttigieg, it's Bernie, and it's Warren. It's the top 3. Biden looks like a wounded duck right now, right?
And he's on CNN over your shoulder right now with a town hall, and him coming in 4th there. He's got it. I mean, he's going to hang on through South Carolina because he's polling really well. That's the 4th contest, folks.
That's his firewall, right?
And their campaign has even said that. If for some reason someone else sneaks up there and he loses South Carolina, I don't see the path. But we'll see. But I want to take this call because somebody knew they were calling specifically to talk to our friend Elie here. Here's Dr. T. You're there?
Yes, I'm here.
How are you, Dr. T?
You?
Got a couple of minutes. I meant to take you earlier because I said to Elie that this person said they met you at Politicon. So here's Elie. Go ahead, Dr. T.
What's up?
Hi, Elie. It's great to talk to you again. It was great meeting you at Politicon last month or a couple of months ago.
Yeah, a couple months ago.
My question is, one of my frustrations with the candidates, but also with the media, is that, we keep, you go on, Dean goes on, you go on Joy's show, and you talk about treating African Americans as a monolith. and how it's important to stop looking at us as a monolithic group of voters. Mm-hmm. And one of my frustrations, and I've tried to like go to town halls and other things to talk to politicians to discuss African Americans who have advanced degrees like myself. We're not interested necessarily in employment from the perspective of minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And I keep hearing that when we like tie in African American voters and people of color as though that's all we want out of employment. You were talking about the wage inequities. And so my thing is, how do we as everyday average people get the media and politicians to start having that conversation about who is going to start looking at the Department of Labor? Who's going to ensure that like data is being examined to see what are the fair hiring practices? You know, are laws being followed? Will groups of people be able to have true advancement in this next administration and be able to really get into companies and have career opportunities based on their education, right? Because we all know meritocracy is a joke. So help me, Elie. Tell me, what can we do?
And by the way, we have like 45 seconds. Sorry, Dr. T, I wish I took you earlier. We have like 45 seconds to a break we have to take. So go ahead, Elie.
This is why it's so critically important that as we get to know the candidates more, we focus more on their policies and the specifics of their policies and less about their broad stroke, like, I'm going to help the blacks, and I'm going to help the women, and I'm going to help the this and the that, right? I think that when you really break down into what African-American issues are as opposed to issues for everybody, I think this is why that word trust becomes so important, because at the end of the day, I don't get to know if you really, as Dr. T was saying, care about my particular, frankly, you know, upper middle class black ass, my needs versus the needs of my best childhood friend back in the day, right? What I need to care about is that you care about me, you care about my community and my issues.
And so, all right, Dr. T, that's a great question. It's a very nuanced question. I've got to go to a break. Thanks for the call. I'll be right back after this.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. The Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. I wish we had another minute there. So, my friend, got a minute. We're here with Elie Mystal. 2020 race. What do you think, New Hampshire? Any quick prediction?
Pete needs to finish ahead of either Warren or Sanders to keep his momentum going. From Iowa, I don't think he will, which will put him kind of in the desperate need of winning Nevada, which I don't think he will, which means South Carolina is still where it's all going to happen.
And he'll probably stick around until Super Tuesday. And then we got the billionaires we're not even talking about yet.
Oh, God.
So, Elie, thank you so much for coming in. It was great to see you, my friend. Folks, don't go anywhere. John Fugelsang, Tell Me Everything with John Fugelsang coming up live after this. And as a reminder, and I keep forgetting to plug it, Monday, if you're in Manchester, New Hampshire area, I'll be at the Red Arrow Diner doing my show live. Free food. I'm not kidding. Free food. Zerlina will be there with Jess in the morning and Michael Scottish in the afternoon and Michael Angelo Signorelli in the afternoon after it. So I'll be there Monday. Michael Signorelli will be there Tuesday. Drop me an email if you want more details. Dean@deanofradio.com. DEAN@deanofradio.com. Be back tomorrow. Have a great night. Don't go anywhere. John's coming up next.